wind howled through the canyons like a wounded beast, dragging dust across the parched New Mexico ground. It slammed into the wooden porch of an isolated ranch house, weathered and worn, standing defiant against the endless desert. Inside, a kettle hissed over a wood-burning stove, and an old man moved with quiet precision, his fingers steady as they poured hot water over crushed leaves. No television, no radio, just silence, broken only by the wind and the rhythmic creak of a rocking chair. John Cutter didn't look like the kind of man legends are made of. 63, with faded flannel shirt tucked into jeans stained by soil and engine grease. He moved like someone who knew every bone in his body had been broken once, and healed stronger. His silver beard framed a face carved by time and loss, and behind sharp, steel-gray eyes lived a war that never ended. A photo sat on the mantel, its colors muted with age. A young woman, her arms around a little boy with Cutter's eyes. Both gone now. Cancer took his wife. A car crash stole his son. The military sent condolences, folded flags. Friends stopped calling. Cutter never asked for more. The only thing he couldn't kill was memory. He stepped outside with his tea, boots crunching against gravel. The horizon bled orange and gold as the sun dipped behind the jagged cliffs. Another day fading. Another day survived. He saw the dust trail before he heard the engine, an old Ford truck barreling down the dirt road. No one ever came out here uninvited. Cutter didn't panic. He watched, silent, until the truck skidded to a stop near the barn. Two men jumped out. One had a machete strapped to his thigh. The other held an AK with casual menace. Tattoos crawled up their necks. Cartel ink, unmistakable. Senor Cutter, one called, thick accent curling the words. We need a favor. Cutter didn't reply. He stepped off the porch and walked toward them like a man going to check a fence, not facing armed strangers. A coyote yipped in the distance. The man with the gun grinned. Nice place. Quiet. Good for storage. We'll be borrowing the barn for a few days. Cutter stopped 6 feet away, his voice calm. No, you won't. The machete man laughed. You're a brave old fool. Cutter's hand was already near the tool belt around his waist. You picked the wrong property. They didn't recognize him. Of course they didn't. The Delta Force didn't advertise. Cutter had led black ops in Mogadishu, Kabul, and Caracas. His name was whispered in corridors where even generals feared to tread. But here, he was just a farmer with nothing left to lose. The man raised a rifle. You should say yes. Cutter's fingers twitched slightly, then stilled. This land isn't for sale. Not to anyone. There was a pause. The kind that stretches like a rubber band, right before it snaps. Bad choice, viejo, the gunman said. They left with a warning and tire tracks that scarred the earth. But they'd be back. Cutter knew that. He'd seen that look before. Men convinced they owned the world. That death was something that happened to other people. That night, Cutter went into the cellar, past the canned peaches and jars of chili. He pulled up the false floorboards. A metal crate, cold to the touch, emerged from the shadows. He opened it, his fingers reverent. The smell of gun oil and memory hit him like a wave. Inside was his past, a suppressed Sig Sauer P226, a custom M4 with an infrared laser sight, throwing knives worn smooth by time, a compass engraved with initials long faded, and a folded letter. His wife's last words. He didn't read it. He never had to. He remembered every syllable. He loaded the weapons methodically, the way another man might prepare fishing gear or check irrigation lines. This was ritual. This was home. 2 nights later, they returned. 5 trucks this time. 10 men. Night vision scopes. Tactical gear. Cartel enforcers. Mercenaries in everything but name. Cutter saw them coming from a mile off. He'd planted trail cams and motion sensors, the same kind he used when hunting mountain lions. The barn was empty. The house dark. To them, it looked abandoned. They split into 2 teams. 3 went around back. 2 approached the porch. 5 flanked toward the barn. The man in front gave a signal. Then hell broke loose. Claymore mines buried under dry brush shredded the front team in a split second. A concussion grenade detonated in the barn, turning it into a smokescreen. Gunfire erupted from the high rocks. Cutter's old hide, where he'd once trained special ops in ambush warfare. He didn't miss. A bullet dropped a lookout. Another clipped the engine of a fleeing truck. Tires screeched. Men yelled in Spanish. The desert exploded in fire and metal. But Cutter didn't kill them all. No, that would be too easy. He let 2 escape, on foot, bleeding, panicked, because they'd go back, tell their bosses, and the bosses would send more. Good, Cutter thought. He stood at the edge of the burning barn, ash swirling around him like snow. His breath was steady, his eyes unreadable. From the shadows, a figure emerged, silent, tall, face wrapped in cloth. Not Cartel, not one of them. Cutter raised his rifle, but the stranger didn't move, just stared. You were watching, Cutter said. The figure nodded. Why? A beat. Then, because war is coming. The voice was deep, calm. It wasn't a threat. It was a truth. Cutter lowered the rifle slowly. For the first time in years, he felt it, something stirring deep inside. Not fear, not rage, purpose. And just like that, the past wasn't behind him anymore. It was knocking on his door. Hard. The rain came fast and hard. turning the desert into a war drum. It slammed against the dry earth in heavy, merciless drops as Cutter moved through the night with a rifle slung across his back and Buck limping beside him. The Labrador's left hind leg bled, where shrapnel had grazed him during the ambush. Cutter kept one hand near his belt pouch, where gauze and morphine vials rattled against old dog tags. They were miles from the ranch now, deep into the wild canyons where few dare to tread. Cutter knew these trails by heart, the kind of places where bones outnumbered footprints. The cartel would be back, but not yet, not in this weather. He had time, but not much. He paused at a dry ledge and crouched beside Buck. The dog's breathing was labored. "You're a stubborn old mutt," Cutter whispered. "Just like me." He cut a strip from his shirt, wrapped the wound tight. Buck licked his wrist once, then lay his head down. Lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating the narrow pass ahead. That's when Cutter saw him, just for a flash. A figure, standing motionless between two stone pillars like a ghost summoned by thunder. Cutter stood, eyes locked, heart steady. The man stepped forward slowly, without fear. He wore a weather poncho and carried a longbow slung over one shoulder, hand resting on a bone-handled knife. His face was dark, leathered by sun and time, with black hair braided tightly against his scalp. Eyes like obsidian, still unreadable. They stared at each other across the space of 20 feet and 20 years. "Friend or cartel?" Cutter asked, voice low. The man didn't answer. He reached into his coat, not fast, not careless, and pulled out a flask. He tossed it to Cutter, who caught it, sniffed it, then took a cautious sip. Water, cold and clean. Cutter handed it back. The man nodded once. "Name's Rafe." Cutter studied him. "You've been tracking them." "I saw your fire," Rafe said. "Smelled blood for miles. You handled them well. Didn't get them all. You weren't supposed to." They sat beside a small fire that night in a cave carved from wind and time. Rafe dried strips of venison over the flames. Cutter cleaned his rifle, watching the man in silence. He didn't ask questions. He just listened. "My niece was taken 6 months ago," Rafe said quietly. "Snatched from our land by men with guns and cash." The sheriff shrugged. "So I started hunting." "Find them?" Rafe nodded slowly. "Some." Cutter looked at the flames, remembering another fire, another night, his wife crying over a folded flag. "They hit my ranch. Told me to hand it over." Rafe's mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile. "Did you?" "No." "Then they'll come again." Cutter glanced toward Buck, who twitched in sleep. "I'm counting on it." At first light, they climbed a ridge overlooking a narrow valley. Cutter lay flat, binoculars pressed his eyes. Below, nestled against a dried riverbed, sat a crude outpost. 2 trucks, 6 tents, half a dozen armed men on patrol. "They're building forward camps," Rafe said beside him. "Moving drugs. Maybe people. Probably both." Cutter scanned the area. "I count 10. That's too clean. There's more underground." Rafe pulled a folded map from his coat and laid it across a boulder. It showed water flow, abandoned mine shafts, and a network of trails no satellite could see. "I've been marking movement," Rafe said. "They're spreading like rot." Cutter tapped a mark near his ranch. "This is home. I'm not giving it up." "You'll need help." "You offering?" Rafe didn't answer, but he didn't leave. That night, they planned. Cutter pulled up a schematic from memory. Military-style positioning, ambush points, fallback zones. Rafe corrected terrain elevations by instinct alone. There was no debate, just quiet work and mutual respect. Buck perked up as they moved through the brush, tail wagging despite the pain. Cutter scratched behind his ears. "He likes you," he muttered. "He's got good taste," Rafe said. 2 nights later, they moved. Rafe entered from the west with a silent arrow, splitting the dark. Cutter breached from the east, cutting the generator's power. Chaos followed. Flames flickered. Gunshots cracked. The scent of blood, smoke, and metal thickened the air. Rafe moved like a shadow, every motion deliberate. Cutter fired only when he had to, always center mass, always precise. They worked together like gears, like soldiers who didn't need words to speak. By dawn, the camp was ash. Bodies lay scattered among overturned crates. Cutter stood over a man bleeding from the mouth, his eyes wide with shock. "You were warned," Cutter said. The man gasped, coughed, and died. Ray found a wooden crate near the collapsed mine entrance. Inside, passports, photos, a bracelet with blue beads. His fingers tightened around it. This was hers. Cutter stepped closer, but said nothing. The desert was silent except for the wind and the soft drip of blood onto stone. They buried the bodies in a shallow trench and burned what was left. No evidence. No names. Just smoke curling into the sky. Later, they sat beneath a mesquite tree, drinking from the same flask. "She was only 13, Ray said quietly. "I should have protected her." "You were one man," Cutter replied. "So was I." No excuse. No mercy either. Their eyes met in the fading light. Two men bound by violence, grief, and the understanding that peace was not given, only earned in blood and time. A soft rustle broke the moment. Buck sat up, ears perked. Cutter turned toward the eastern ridge. There, far in the distance, 5 trucks kicking up dust, headed west. "They're coming back," Rafe said. Cutter stood, eyes narrowed. "Let them." The sun hadn't yet risen when the first gunshot split the morning silence. A sharp crack echoed through the canyon, followed by another and then a scream, raw and short. Cutter dropped to one knee beside a boulder, rifle raised, eyes scanning the ridgeline. Rafe was already in position, his bow drawn, the arrowhead gleaming in the half-light. Below them, the final battle had begun. The 5 cartel trucks hadn't come quietly. They barreled across the valley like wolves descending on a wounded deer. 20 men in tactical gear spilled out, armed with ARs and armor-piercing rounds. They didn't speak. They didn't warn. They came to a race. But Cutter and Rafe were ready. The night before, they had booby-trapped the trail. Claymores behind loose rocks, tripwires hidden in sagebrush. Cutter had crouched for hours, placing every charge of the patience of a man who understood that war wasn't about speed. It was about precision. Rafe had scouted the canyon, memorized every echo, every blind corner. Now the plan unfolded. The first truck hit a tripwire. The explosion flipped it sideways, flames licking at the undercarriage as bodies were hurled from the wreckage. The second truck swerved, only to have its tires shredded by spike strips hidden beneath dry sand. Cutter opened fire. His shots were calm, deliberate. 2 in the chest, 1 in the head. He didn't miss. Every bullet was a decision. Every kill was personal. Rafe moved without a sound, slipping between shadows like smoke. His arrows whispered through the air, embedding into flesh before anyone even saw him coming. The cartel scrambled, shouting commands in Spanish, firing blindly into the hills. Buck stayed hidden behind a rock outcropping, panting, a protective vest strapped tight around his body. Cutter had trained him years ago to stay put in gunfire, but even now, the dog's eyes tracked his every movement with fierce loyalty. A sharp whistle. Rafe's signal. Cutter rolled left, dodging a grenade blast that shook the ground and sprayed dirt into the sky. He crawled forward, repositioned, and took out a sniper perched behind a mesquite tree. Blood sprayed across bark, and the rifle tumbled to the ground. By mid-morning, the canyon was thick with smoke. The cartel's numbers had thinned, but their leader remained, **El Mudo **, the mute executioner, known for torture and silence. His presence had been a rumor until now, but Cutter recognized him immediately. The neck tattoos, the black gloves, the cold, dead eyes. El Mudo stood at the center of the chaos, his shotgun in hand. He watched Cutter from a distance, then pointed. A new wave surged forward. Cutter's magazine clicked empty. He reloaded behind a boulder as bullets cracked overhead. Rafe reappeared beside him, breathing hard, blood on his arm. "You hit?" Cutter asked. "Not mine." Together, they made a final push. Cutter charged left, drawing fire, while Rafe flanked from the ridge above. An arrow pierced a guard's throat. Cutter took another down at close range, the butt of his rifle cracking the man's jaw before finishing him with a clean shot. And then, El Mudo was on him. They collided like freight trains. Cutter's rifle skidded across the dirt as the cartel leader tackled him to the ground. The shotgun boomed. Missed. Cutter punched. El Mudo elbowed. Blood spilled. Bones cracked. The fight was primal, feral. Years of pain and hate exploded between them with every strike. El Mudo reached for a knife. Cutter's hand closed around a jagged rock. He slammed it against the man's head once. Twice. 3 times. Then silence. Cutter rolled off, gasping. El Mudo didn't move. He sat there for a moment, drenched in sweat and blood, staring at the sky like it held answers. Rafe appeared beside him, breathing hard, covered in ash. "It's done," Rafe said. "No," Cutter replied, standing slowly. "It's begun." They burned the bodies, piling them in the canyon basin, and setting the fire with gasoline from the trucks. The flames reached into the sky, black smoke twisting like a curse finally lifted. Later, they stood on the ridge, watching the valley below as the fire ate away at the last remnants of the cartel's presence. "You ever gonna leave this place?" Rafe asked. Cutter thought for a long time. "Where would I go?" Rafe didn't answer. He just looked east, where the sun now rose, spreading gold across the cliffs. They walked back to what was left of Cutter's ranch. Burned fences, a ruined barn, shattered windows. But the earth still held strong. The foundation, scarred as it was, had survived. Like Cutter, he knelt beside a shallow grave near the porch, marked only with 2 stones. One for his wife, one for his son. "I did it," he whispered. "I did what you'd want me to." Buck lay beside him, head on his paws, tail wagging weakly. The next few days were spent rebuilding. Not the house, not yet. That would come later. First, they helped relocate the hostages Cutter and Rafe had freed weeks earlier. Women, children, and lost men who'd found a reason to stand again. The nearby town opened its doors, moved by wordless stories carried by the smoke. One night, under a sky full of stars, Cutter sat on the porch steps with a hammer in one hand and a bourbon bottle in the other. Rafe joined him, dropping a pile of mail, mostly junk, but one envelope was different. Military postmark. Cutter opened it slowly. Inside, a request. "We're assembling a new task force. Civilian leadership. Border-focused. We want you." Cutter stared at it for a long while. Then he looked at Rafe. "What do you think?" Rafe leaned back, folding his arms. "You want peace or purpose?" Cutter took a long sip of bourbon. "Maybe both." The wind carried the smell of mesquite smoke and gunpowder as Cutter rode slowly along the ridgeline on an old mule he borrowed from a rancher down south. Buck padded beside him, healed enough to travel, though a slight limp still haunted his step. Below them, the horizon stretched wide and brutal, miles of scorched earth and secrets buried beneath sun-bleached stone. Somewhere out there, more were coming. Cutter could feel in his bones, the way an old soldier feels the next ambush long before it comes. He pulled the mule to a stop and raised the binoculars. Through the shimmering heat, a convoy approached, 3 SUVs military grade, flying no flags. That meant one thing. Contractors, not cartel, not government. Mercs. The cartel had upgraded. Behind him, Rafe stood at the edge of the bluff, arms crossed, face unreadable. He didn't ask what Cutter saw. He already knew. "Looks like they brought professionals this time," Cutter muttered, lowering the binoculars. "They still bleed," Rafe replied. Cutter gave a dry chuckle. "Yeah, so do we—" They turned back toward the camp they'd built in the high valley. Tents camouflaged under brush. Food stored in steel crates buried deep, maps spread under lantern light. Locals had started trickling in, men and women whose homes had been burned or raided. Rafe had spoken to them in low tones, teaching them how to hold a rifle, how to listen to the wind. Cutter hadn't planned on leading anyone again, but fate has a cruel sense of humor. That night, he sat by the fire, reassembling his M4 with slow, practiced hands. Buck rested with his head on Cutter's boot. Across from them, a young man named Mateo cleaned an old hunting rifle. 17, angry and reckless. He reminded Cutter too much of his son. "You ever kill anyone?" Mateo asked, eyes sharp. Cutter didn't look up. Yeah. Does it get easier? No. The boy fell silent. In the morning, the camp rose with quiet purpose. Rafe led drills while Cutter studied the terrain. They had 3 days, maybe 4, before the convoy reached the valley. Time enough to prepare, not enough to be ready. By noon, Cutter walked the edge of the canyon with Mateo. "Why are you here?" Cutter asked. "They took my sister." Cutter nodded. No follow-up. No need. "You think we can beat them?" the boy asked. Cutter looked out at the endless sky. "No, but we can make them remember us." They spent the next 2 days rigging the valley. Deadfalls, pits, and fallback trenches. Cutter trained the new hands to fight smart, not loud. Rafe taught them how to vanish into dust and reappear with death in their hands. On the third night, Cutter sat alone, staring at the stars. He clutched a folded piece of paper, the offer from the government, a way back into the machine. A chance to fight legally, with support, funding, and a clear mission. But the mission here felt clearer than anything a Pentagon office could write. He heard footsteps. Rafe joined him, silent as always. "You taking the job?" he asked. Cutter shrugged. "Feels like a younger man's game." "You're not old. You're just heavy." Cutter smirked. "That what you tell yourself?" They sat in silence. "I buried a lot of people," Cutter said finally, "but I never buried my guilt." Rafe said nothing. He didn't have to. At dawn, the convoy arrived. They came fast, engines roaring, kicking up dust trails like dragons across the plain. 40 men, drones, spotters with scopes. The cartel had sent their best. And still, Cutter stood tall. He raised a fist on the ledge, overlooking the pass. The first charge detonated, flipping the lead SUV into the air. Flames erupted. Screams filled the canyon, and chaos descended like a plague. Mateo took out a sniper from a ledge to the east. Cutter watched with quiet pride. No hesitation, no fear. Rafe moved like a ghost through the rocks, loosing arrows into the throats of armored mercs. Cutter dropped into the fight, rifle flashing, boots pounding over rock. He called out commands, moved from position to position, covering, flanking, pushing back. But the mercs weren't amateurs. They regrouped fast, forming a wedge that sliced through the outer defenses. The makeshift militia began to fall back. Mateo was pinned behind a boulder, gun jammed, screaming. A merc closed in. Cutter didn't think. He ran. He dove between them, firing point blank. The merc dropped. Cutter grabbed Mateo, dragging him back behind cover. "You hurt?" Cutter asked. The boy shook his head, wide-eyed. Then reload. And breathe. The tide shifted. Rafe climbed a high ridge, fired a flaming arrow into the last truck's fuel tank. The explosion shook the ground. Within 20 minutes, it was over. Smoke rose into the sky. The air stank of blood, sweat, and victory. Cutter stood in the center of it all, breathing hard, his shirt soaked through, hands shaking from adrenaline and something deeper. Something like fear or maybe relief. They had survived, but barely. As the sun dipped low, Cutter walked alone into the hills. He reached a cliff where the wind howled freely and the earth felt honest. He took the government letter from his pocket, struck a match, and let the flame eat a hole. Buck sat beside him, watching. Rafe appeared a moment later. "You done running?" he asked. Cutter didn't answer right away. "I thought I was done with war," he said finally. "But maybe war wasn't done with me." He looked at the stars. "But if I'm going to keep fighting, I want to choose a ground. I want it to mean something. And does this..." Cutter looked back toward the valley, where survivors buried their dead and built new walls. "Yeah," he said softly. "It does."